Hey, I hope you can hear me. I've done a bad job of setting this up. Hang on. Welcome to my nose. Drop that down. Are we okay? The light's bad, but it's fine. It's fine. It's all fine. This is what we're going with. This is as good as we're going to make it tonight. I hope you can hear me. I hope it sounds fine. Hey, Sean. This stream is about what I've learned in forcing myself to do weekly live streams, with one exception for my wife's birthday, when I posted a live conversation that I had with my friend Fabian. When I posted that after the fact and scheduled it to go live. With that one exception, I've streamed live every Tuesday night. And tonight I have to start, before we get into what I wanted to talk about, I have to say that one of the things that I've learned about myself during live streaming, and one of the things that I haven't really had to deal with in any real way, is tragedy. And today, Tuesday, May 24th, there was a tragedy. There was a shooting, and I watch Colbert's show, and I watch other late night shows and different things here and there, and it's always so weird to watch a show the day that something horrible happens, because there has to be a recognition of it, and you can't. I mean, you have three options when something like this happens. You can either ignore it completely on one end of the spectrum. You can cancel everything out of respect, or this middle spot of you just address it and try to continue. And I have done a very good job of avoiding every piece of the news. I don't check the news other than Colbert's show. That's my one window into the world, but I don't read the news. I've had to take steps to avoid it, but I don't read the news. I used to read the New York Times multiple times a day. I'd check their website, I would check Reddit. I would just be in tune. And when I was on social media, you can't avoid it. And so I've worked hard to cut news out of my life. And I've talked about before why that's complicated for me. But so often, if there's a tragedy and I know about it, I'm sad and there's nothing I can do about it. And if I don't know about it, then I feel ignorant and out of touch. But then I have to ask myself the question, what is the benefit of being aware of it? If there's no change that I can make and it just makes me sad, why even know about it? And when Jesse told me about what happened today, this isn't my response. This is some live stream that 3 people are watching. Hi, 3 people, 4 people. Thank you. But it's bold to say the show must go on, my little live stream here. But never before have I had to deal with having an agenda, something to talk about, and something got in the way. Some tragedy happened that has affected me in this way, where I'm angry and I'm sad. Hey, Ed. And it feels insensitive to continue with what I wanted to talk about, but we kind of have to. And so suffice it to say that one of the things I'm learning from these live streams is that sometimes they can be poorly timed, and that's tough to try to handle it the right way, because I don't think that there is a right way. And so I will summarize a lot of feelings that I've had since finding out just a little bit about what happened today by saying I'm heartbroken and I'm sad and I'm angry, and I wish peace for the families who are hurting, and I beg for action from anyone with the power to do something about it, because this is a stupid thing to have to keep doing. And the number of times that the late night shows have had to apologize at the top of their broadcasts is hard to count at this point. And it's a stupid thing that we could prevent. But we have, at this point, as a nation, chosen not to, and that's heartbreaking. But that is not what we're talking about tonight. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Again, I hope my audio sounds good. I can't monitor my audio when I'm using my phone to stream, so just hoping for the best. But this has been 30. This is show 31, weekly Tuesday nights at 8:30. And I started this with the hope of, as my life moves around, and if I'm on set on a Tuesday night, being committed to saying, "Hey, tonight," thanks Jay, to say, "Hey, tonight we're live on set. This is what we're shooting," to give you a little glimpse into it, and to be traveling for pleasure, and just sort of commit myself to giving you this little cross section of my life every Tuesday night. And a lot of times it's been me working and prepping gear for an upcoming shoot, or it's been something that has been weighing on me emotionally and I'm talking about it, or creatively, things like that. So it's been very fun to do these, and having done 30 of them, including a couple of video game streams, I played baseball with my brother, and maybe somebody else. And I've played Breath of the Wild, and then I've done some gear packing. I've told some stories from some of my trips, and I've talked a lot about creativity. And in all that, the reason that I committed myself to doing this was somewhat ill conceived, where I knew that there's a strength. I knew that there's lessons to be learned in live streaming every week. And I don't think in the first few weeks, and there's always lessons you can learn from everything that you do, but as I'm looking at this into the future, and I don't know what this is going to be and how long I'm going to do this, but let's say, hypothetically, that I do this for years. And to be able to look back in 5 years, in 10 years, and say, every Tuesday night, there was a little piece of me, a little expression, like a diary, like therapy, whatever you want to call it. There's something that's been important to me that I'm putting out there. And that by itself is a cool thing. And that's definitely a benefit to this. But the added layer to it is sort of twofold. And one, it's ahead of time to say, what am I going to talk about? What is tonight's topic going to be? And so often I come up with this on Tuesdays during nap time between 1 and 3, when my son is hopefully napping. And that's when I put together a thumbnail as quickly as I can and make this live stream. And having these ideas ahead of time to say, what am I going to do, has been a challenge, and forcing yourself to iterate and come up with fresh ideas is tough. And quickly I start to think like, well, is this the same thing that I did last week? Like, I'm packing my gear again. How is this different? How is this valuable? And trying to wrap your life around the concept of how do I create something of value every week is difficult. And it's been a fun exercise to brainstorm through that, and then to try to expand on that to say, like, during the week, if I get an idea, I want to write it down in a place that I can pull from when I'm struggling to come up with ideas. But the second layer of this is there is that impetus to create something unique and useful. But then when you start to zoom into the future and back out to say, this has been 30 weeks of doing this, it's been since November, I think. And what's it going to be in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? And to say, looking back on all this, has there been anything of value? What has been of value? What is exciting? What is beneficial to the viewers? And to look back and say, wow, everything was the same, or everything was like, there's that pressure to not only create week after week, but to look at it in aggregate in the future and say, what is actually happening here? What is useful? And so, Ed, you've put a lot on my screen, and I'm excited to read it, but it disappeared too quickly on my iPhone. And so I'm going to come back to the comments before I end this, but I'm going to take a sip of water real quick first. My household has been affected by COVID this week, this week and a half. And thankfully, I've continued to test negative, and I've had no symptoms, and I've been able to care for my son, who has also been asymptomatic and doesn't seem to be sick. It's been my wife who tested positive and has had relatively mild symptoms, thankfully. But it's been a struggle. And in this, I had a shoot last Thursday, and that was right after she tested positive. And while I tested negative, it was a shoot at a children's museum called the Magic House here in St. Louis. And I'm grateful that I had a team that was ready to, there were 2 people who were already filming with me, and then my buddy Brett was able to fill in for me. So there was still a 3-person team, but I didn't feel like I could, in good faith, have an exposure to COVID and go into a children's museum. But the other little thing, and I don't know if I've talked about this, but I sure have thought about it a lot, is as a creator, one of the risks of COVID is not just to your health and to your family dynamic and your routines and your rhythms, but that was money that I was going to make last week. And instead of making any money, I made no money. And I'm glad that it was only one shoot that I had to miss. But when people look at me funny for wearing a mask, like when I went to this conference in Indiana at the end of April, I'm wearing a mask the whole time, and I'm getting the looks. I was wearing 2 masks, and counting those 2, I saw 9 masks total, including one on Julia, who was working with me. But it's that, like, it's not, I'm not employed by somebody. I don't get paid time off like a lot of people do. I feel like a lot of the people who are like, hey, COVID's not a big deal. You're not gonna be hospitalized. You're just gonna be sick for a couple of days. Like, well, yeah, if you're gonna get paid for those couple of days, that is fine. If not only do I not get paid, but I have to scramble to find people to work for me that I can pay that money to, and I don't get paid extra for having to cover for myself, that's a problem. And I didn't care for it. And so be careful out there. Treat your freelancers. Give them a little bit of room if they need it. But I digress. All this was to say that the other interesting thing about all these live streams is by committing to this, it's not just once a week. It's Tuesday nights at 8:30, and with the exception of Jesse's birthday, I've stuck to that. And like tonight, this is the window into my life this week is I'm angry and sad about what I read in the news, but also my family is dealing with COVID right now. And having to, I keep saying have to, understand that there's an asterisk by that. I get that this is a YouTube live stream, and the stakes are remarkably low. But to have to create, to force myself to create in these situations where it's not ideal, it's inconvenient, it's in the way. Sometimes I have other work that I need to be doing. Sometimes the house is a wreck and I need to clean the kitchen and do other stuff. And Jesse's just had a long day. And then for me to say like, well, I'm going to go down to the basement and talk to 4 people on the internet for a while. Sorry. I feel bad about that. I'm grateful for her support, which has been unwavering with all of my creative endeavors. But I tell you that to tell you this, it's the kind of thing where by forcing myself to create no matter what, one of the muscles that I'm building is some resilience, some perseverance to say, this is not ideal. How can we make this happen quickly? Where are some corners we could cut to make this happen? And a lot of it is just in my basement through my iPhone. Tonight, I'm rocking the Rode M1 into the Zoom F6, into the camera USB adapter, into the lightning cable for the iPhone. So this isn't an ideal setup, and I do have a lot of gear, but I seldom have the time to set it all up. And so one of the things that I've learned from this is just I'm getting better at the quick decisions of what isn't necessary. And I would have loved to have put a light on me tonight instead of this LED overhead tube lighting that is just like fluorescent room lighting. I would have loved to have set up one of the many lights that I have paid for that do a wonderful job of lighting me. But tonight I knew it was cutting it close. I wasn't in a good place, and I had literally 4 minutes. I came downstairs and had 4 minutes to put my phone in this clip, attach it to a C-stand, turn on my audio recorder, check my levels, and get them into the camera. And this is the kind of thing where when I'm on a real shoot, a real job, we sometimes have these things where we don't have as much time to set up. And when we were in that conference in Indiana, we had to film an interview on one morning, and we were told we would be able to get in at 9, and the interview started at 10, and an hour is kind of tight. Usually I like an hour and a half to get set up, really test things, run through things, check all your levels, get your lighting right, make sure all your cameras are synced up and white balanced and all that and good to go. And instead we only had an hour, and I was like, okay, that's fine. This is what I do. I come in, I can scramble, it's fine. But the meeting that was in this room before us went so late that we had about 25 minutes to set up. And we had a hard out because someone that we were interviewing had to leave. They had to get on a flight, so they couldn't just stay. We couldn't just bump the whole thing back. And last week's live stream, I showed how I fixed that problem where this guy had to leave. I ended up sitting in for the interview and then putting him in, like masking myself out and just using footage from when he was sitting in the chair. But that was all because of this situation where we didn't get to start on time, not even close. But in those moments, I was able to throw up lights pretty quickly and get my mics up pretty quickly and get things set up in a way that was fine. Was it perfect? No. But I felt pretty confident making the sacrifices that we made. And there were some things I probably should have adjusted the lights a little bit and really feathered the power to get things balanced just right. But we didn't have the time. But I knew by looking at it, and I knew from where I had things set before, that it was probably close enough to get away with. And we did, and it's fine. But that's something that I've taken from this is by consistently week after week putting in work and iterating, you learn things. You learn things and you get better at things. And for somebody like me who, for a huge chunk of the pandemic, I didn't work at all, and I got rusty. And my first few shots back, my first few gigs back, it was the kind of thing where, like, I'm forgetting to check things, and I'm going through my checklist, and I am slow, and I'm lacking confidence just because it's been so long, and I had upgraded a lot of gear that I hadn't really gotten to test in the field yet. And now, by forcing myself to do this, and there have been weeks where I have really put on a production here with the lighting and everything, and there have been weeks where I have, like tonight, just barely made it up I barely got my camera horizontal in time to start streaming. And this is something that, I mean, everyone says you're 10,000 hours, go create, go do things, go iterate. And for somebody like me who I don't have a ton of free time because of the full-time dad thing that I do most of the time, to go out and be doing passion projects and here and there and testing things, I don't always have that freedom and that flexibility. And this is my little window into that. By committing to this, by clearing my schedule for this every Tuesday night, I am iterating. I am doing different things, and I'm writing. And some things I've written out full scripts, and some things I sit down and I wing it. Other things I have an outline. So that's the other big piece of this. Is not only is there the technical preparation and deployment of the gear that makes all this happen, and the decisions that I get better at making from doing this as many times, but after I select what topic and get things set up, the other piece of it is, what is it? And this, I think, for me is the biggest piece of why I do this, because over the past 30 live streams, it's a strange thing to say. I'm getting good at talking into my camera, sitting alone in my basement when I can't hear anybody talking back. And it's a skill that you wouldn't think necessarily at first glance is a useful one, except if you are doing live streaming. But what I have found is that as I've been in a few meetings, in Zoom meetings and stuff like that, one thing that I don't know if this is positive, but I can't help it, or rather I don't notice it first, but I'm looking directly into the camera on my phone right now, which is why it looks like I'm making eye contact with you. This is when I'm looking at myself. I'm looking at myself on my front-facing screen right now. This is weird, but this is how Zooms look, because you're looking at somebody that you're talking to on your screen. I, by contrast, stare into my camera when I'm on Zoom calls, and I'm able to ignore anyone's face as they're talking and stuff below. And I don't know that it's a good thing, but it's a byproduct of talking to my camera as much as I have, where I'm trying when I'm speaking to make a connection to whom I'm talking to. And by looking directly into the camera and being able to ignore the image of myself that is just next to me here, just next to where I'm looking, does help me connect in a different way than I think I would have if I wasn't flexing this muscle every week. But the other big piece of it is public speaking. And I'm with you. This isn't public speaking. This is basement speaking to my phone, which is very different than public speaking. But I think you can see what I'm referring. And my ability to public speak, every time I talk about this, by the way, on this live stream, I lose my words. And this is like the one thing where I feel like I struggle to articulate, talking about how good I have gotten at articulating different things. And the two places where I really see it are, one, when I'm speaking, I'm putting together sentences a little differently. I'm watching my ums, ers, and ahs, and I've gotten better at that, though I'm sure you could look back at this and hear quite a few of them. But the way that I talk and the sentences that I craft, I think, are better now than they were back when I started this in November. And that comes from just forcing myself to do it, to give a speech, to give an impromptu, improvised speech every Tuesday night for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes. And there's value in that. There's value in forcing yourself to speak and to follow a train of thought and go through an outline. And that's really important. And the second thing is that I can keep track of when I've said 2 things, 3 things, and the 4 things that I want to talk about. And none of this did I write ahead of time. I was going to put together an outline, and then I was upset by what I had heard and read about what happened today. And so I didn't spend any time on this. Instead, I just spent time being angry and sad. And in spite of writing nothing, I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can come here and I know my general thoughts ahead of time, and I don't need to write them out, and I don't need to write them down and outline it. And I can say that the second thing that I'm keeping track of is the number of things I said I was going to talk about, and I remember what they are. And that's been a neat thing about this, where I have noticed, again, in Zoom calls and in like the 2 in-person meetings I've had, when I'm making my point, when it's my turn to talk, I feel composed, I feel patient with myself, and I feel like I understand where I'm going with what I want to say, and I'm confident that I will get there, maybe not in the most efficient way, but in a way that I feel really illustrates the points that I'm trying to make. And that's something that I don't think I had as well before. And I feel like when I had an argument that I was trying to make, or when I was conversing with somebody, I would lose myself in a little bit. I would follow my own tangents, and I still have tangents, obviously. Welcome to the live stream. But I'm able to return from those tangents back to my original thoughts better than I was able to before. And I think that's only because I'm doing it. I'm doing this again and again and following it and practicing. And it's not the kind of thing that you can just tell yourself, well, like, well, I'm going to make sure that I really, once I go on a tangent, return to the 3 points that I was making, knowing that I was at the beginning of point number 2, which had 2 sub-points under that, and then I need to get point number 3. But this is for some reason the skill that I have developed. Didn't get better at not needing water, though. So I think as I look back, those are the main things that I've learned from doing these live streams, is iterating ideas and trying to build a library of content that I find, that I hope is useful and entertaining, or at least one of those. Occasionally, I do slip in something that's just for me, and I feel like those get good reception for some reason, and I'm fine with that. And it's the kind of thing where you hear movie people talk about it, like, you do one for me, one for them, one for you, one for them. You do the kind of movie that maybe people don't like, but it's really fun to do, and it scratches your artistic itches. And then you do one that's more box office fodder, and it keeps you popular and it gets you paid, but it doesn't fill the soul. And for me, I've been pleasantly surprised that when I've spoken from the heart and found topics that resonate with me, to my surprise, a lot of them have been well received. And even though maybe there's something wrong with the Tuesday night time slot, and that's why there's never more than 4 or 5 people watching, because it's definitely not me or my channel that would hold back this kind of exponential growth that one would expect. But the fact that my audience has not grown substantially since I started doing this 30 weeks ago, I feel like there's a lesson there that I have not quite learned yet. But similar to my channel in general, that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to grow a channel. I'm not here to be a professional YouTuber. I'm not here to replace my income with stuff for YouTube, because I know how, I don't know how to play that game, but I know that it's different than the way that I'm playing, and it's not a way that I would want to. I feel like I could commit to doing gear videos and top 10 things about the Sony a7S III and before you switch to Sony. And I've tiptoed in the clickbait before, but usually in a spot that I still really believe in, and maybe I title it in a way that I hope will appeal to more people, because what I'm creating has value to me. But I don't want to go down that road where I'm committed to creating something just to maintain an audience. And so I am so grateful that there are 4 of you tonight. And I saw a 5th pop in, and I don't know if it's the same 4 and if you guys have been here the whole time, but it's such a privilege to have an audience. Regardless of the size, it is such an honor to the feeling of knowing that when I turn on my phone and start doing this, there might be somebody who would be willing to listen to whatever it is I have to say is a very humbling's not the right word. I mean, it is to an extent, but it's sort of the opposite, where it's so powerful to think that anyone would spend any time just listening to me. And so that's the last big lesson I'd say that I've learned from these live streams, where I put videos up there and people make their choices about, does this appeal to me? Is this something I want to watch? But when somebody sits on a live stream, like, you can leave. You can leave at any point. As soon as you realize this dude is just some dude with a crooked hat that doesn't know what he's talking about and he's rambling, you can go. And the fact that people don't is very, very special. And so to the 4 of you, to anyone who's going to rewatch this later and make it this far into the video, that's so awesome. It is so awesome, and it is what fuels the front side of this, which is the creating the ideas, because I want to do something that is true to me, but like I said, useful and or entertaining. And so it means the world to me that you would spend any time here. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm going to take a second to look back through the comments, because I know there have been some. And let's see here. Ed. The 4th or 5th stream that I watch. It's 4 to 5 a.m. at my time when you stream. I'm editing right now. Oh, man. Get some sleep, Ed. It's way too late to be editing. And I hope I'm not being distracting then. It's valuable to see you, see how you change values, but piece of your experience. Yeah, so my motto at Boom is empower and equip. And after I had some magnets made that say that, let me see if I have one right here. Yeah, I made some magnets because I didn't want to put a sticker on my car that say empower, equip, and they're the rainbow pride colors. It's the logo that James Walker did for me. And I started to realize that on the back of my white pickup truck, having the words empower and equip don't necessarily skew toward equity by default. I feel like it wouldn't be hard to look at my truck and assume that I'm talking about guns or something. Empower and equip the white people, I think, is a message that could be misconstrued from this. And so as I've been thinking about it, what I wanted to look at was adding empathize. So empathize, empower, equip. And I feel like that would be a better representation of the values that I'm trying to get get across. But looking at the lessons that I've learned, and my goal with all this being to empathize with people, to empower them to tell their story, and to equip them to tell their story. That's really empowering people to tell their story is awesome. And it's what makes my job so rewarding. And sometimes that's me going out and recording their stories through my work and doing interviews with people and creating projects for people. That's a very, very cool thing. And sometimes it's more subtle through YouTube by me being some dude in a crooked hat that people are listening to 30 minutes into a live stream. Hopefully what you can glean from that, if there's nothing in the content that I'm saying, you can start to realize that, hey, if this dude can talk into a microphone in his basement for 30 minutes every Tuesday, maybe I can too. And that's the piece to me that I feel like is really awesome when I'm trying to get this notion of empowering people to tell their story out there. I think the fact that I have a podcast, which doesn't get updated that frequently, and I do the Hardy and Sons podcast with David, and I have these live streams, and I make my other videos, and the fact that anyone watches any of them should be an indication to you that if you have something to share, something of value, whether it's how to make a video, whether it's your life story and struggles that you've faced and how you've overcome adversity or not, and how you continue to struggle with it in different ways, there's serious value in sharing that with other people who haven't heard it. And while it may be all you know, it can be really easy to say, well, this is all I know. It's probably, I mean, everyone knows what this is like, right? But no, and there's value in sharing that experience with other people. And so hopefully that's a byproduct of these live streams and of me just spewing words every week, is maybe someone can watch it and it'll be enough for them to say, well, hey, I can do it too. And that's a very cool piece of it, and that's the empowerment. And then the other part of it is equip. And like I said, sometimes this is equipping people to tell their stories by me coming out with my gear and filming it, and other times it's me providing tips on how to better use your camera gear, your audio gear, whatever it may be. And by equipping people to tell their stories better or to tell other people's stories better, that's hugely important to me. And when I think back to the legacy that I want to leave when I'm done with YouTube for whatever reason, if there's people who watch this and either tell their own story or help other people tell their stories, anytime one of these stories hits the world, hits the internet in some way, or finds a viewer, a listener, anything, that ripple effect is the most rewarding thing of my job. And when I look back, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but when I look back on my career at this point, if I can I feel like I have to put it in quotes for some reason, but when I look back on my career and the stuff that I've made, I think my biggest project, like my keystone creative moment, was the Marshmallow Lesson, which all of my friends came together to help bring that to life. And looking at it, I'm so proud of it. It's such a cool thing that we conceptualized and created out of nothing, but it's fine. It's not the most amazing thing I've ever written. As I watch it, there's 100 things that I would change. I learned a ton of lessons by creating it, but when I look at other directors and other producers and stuff, and I'm like, wow, look at their body of work. Look at all these films that they've done. Look at these music videos. That's so cool. I don't have that. And that's inspiring for other people to look at that and say, wow, I'm inspired by Steven Spielberg, who, I mean, insert whoever you want here. But if a tiny piece of my legacy is not that the Marshmallow Lesson film did anything to inspire anyone to do filmmaking, maybe these live streams and the other videos that I make on here are enough to equip somebody, to encourage them, to motivate them, to inspire them to tell their story a little bit and to listen to other people's stories and help. If you have an audience, use it to get more stories out there, whether it's your story, other people's stories, or you helping other people tell their stories. It's important. And so I have some videos that I'm excited, hopefully this summer, to create. And I want to do an interview series of my friends, where there's a lot of people that I'm close to that I really respect. And I kind of want to take the time to just put some of these people on a pedestal and talk about what about them impresses me and why. In the same way that you would put a Spielberg up, I would put up my buddy Jay and talk about some of the things he's done that I'm just in awe of. And it's stuff like that I think is really neat, that potential of an audience. And so once again, I come back to thanks. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching this. It means the world to me. And I hope that you create stuff and that you enjoy creating it and that you take the time to remember that you can help other people create too. And I think it's a very easy thing to forget sometimes. And we may say, well, I just started doing this, or I'm really young. I'm not somebody who can, hire other people and really whatever. But the truth is, if you're just getting into this, you still have the opportunity to bring people up with you and to encourage other people and to reach out there and have an impact. And so the two things that I'm going to end with are two little challenges for you, I guess, or maybe not challenges for you, but action items, I would say. The first is somewhat unrelated directly to video production. Not direct. I mean, it is very unrelated from video production, but this happened to me. I had really, really good food from a restaurant this week, a restaurant called Namaste here in St. Louis on Southampton. It's Indian and Nepalese food, I believe. I could be wrong on that. I'm very sorry, but man, was it good. And I called them afterward. I called them the next day and I asked to talk to the manager, and the person who answered the phone, understandably, said, "Oh, is everything okay?" And I had to be like, yeah, everything was great. This is a happy phone call. I would like to talk to your manager to tell them how happy I was with the person who was working the little booth where we walked in and got our food, and that the food was fantastic. But it hit me a little differently where I forgot that most of the calls that these people probably get are pretty negative phone calls. People complaining about stuff that may have been out of anyone's control, may have been influenced by a whole bunch of bad things that happened to them in that day that weren't related to the food. And so challenge number one is, if you had a good experience anywhere, like, I appreciate these happy comments here on this video. And if you want to take just a bit of that initiative to call Taco Bell. If you had a good order at Taco Bell, that's not the easiest job. And I'm sure they get some angry phone calls and whatever. If you can go and just tell a manager, hey, I know it was slammed the other night. The food was ready quick. You got the order right and it tasted delicious. Thanks so much for being awesome. Those little pieces can have such an impact in our society and can affect people in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So take some time, if you can. If you've got 30 seconds, call somebody that you don't know that was of service to you in some way, and let them know that it was spectacular. Because in video production, we have contact with our clients, good and bad. We usually have feedback, but there's a lot of places where you only get feedback if it's bad, and that's something that we can do something about. And the very last piece, I said there were two, and I kept track. Call somebody and compliment them. And two, going back to the thing at the very beginning of this, which talking about the tragedy that happened today in Texas, and being transparent that I don't know all the details. I was told about it by my wife, and I have not taken the time to read about it, and I have all my own thoughts about that. But I'm reminded of what Patton Oswalt said in, I think it was his most recent special. If he's put out another one since then, I apologize. I haven't watched it yet. But after he lost his wife, he was talking in a special about some time had passed, and he met someone, and he was hesitant about it, but they had a connection, and they fell in love. And he said there was pushback. There was pushback from people close to him about, are you rushing this? Is this too soon? Blah, blah, blah. And a hesitation to say, like, maybe you shouldn't yet. And his advice was so simple, but it hit me right in the heart. And he said, if you have the opportunity, run toward love. If there's love, run toward it, embrace it. Don't hesitate. Don't look for reasons to discount it. Don't write it off to it'd be strange, whatever. Run toward love. And this, I don't mean accost someone with a relationship, please, consensually, but not just in a relationship, but in this world, there's a lot of little places that we can have a little bit of love and a little bit of positivity. And I've seen it in the comments on these live streams, and I do my best to reflect it back. And there are places that we can take it beyond this tiny, happy little corner on YouTube. And so take that with you. After this, call somebody, text somebody that you went to school with a long time ago, a cousin that you haven't spoken to in a while, and just say, hey, I hope you're doing well, thinking about you, let's catch up soon, whatever it is. 10 seconds can make a difference, and 10 seconds can make a smile, and a smile can have a difference. And there's a bumper sticker for you. Check it out on the store at my full name, all lowercase, no spaces.com. That's all I got. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Again, it's an absolute honor. Have a wonderful day, night, whatever, wherever. See you later. Bye.